Let's dive right in with CSS Transitions. Now, while an animation can be run from beginning to end instantaneously, a transition is a little bit different. A transition basically describes how a property should change. That is to say, you want the color to change when people are on an active link versus an inactive link? Well, a transition can tell how that change should happen. Should it happen fast? Should it happen slow? How long should it take? Do you want to do anything special with it? Transitions describe that change from one state to another. As such, you need two ingredients to make a transition: the property you want to change, like color, and the duration, how long you want it to take to change. You can write this out with transition property or transition duration, but the shorthand is just to list them side by side. Let's look a little closer at the anatomy of a transition. Transition property is the property you want to transition. Now, only some properties are transitionable. You can find a list of all of those different properties at the link provided. This can be super confusing if you're under a tight deadline and just can't figure out why that radial background gradient isn't transitioning for you on hover. If you check this list, you will see that radial background gradients, not transitionable. Then there's the transition duration. You can write this in milliseconds or seconds. I tend to prefer using milliseconds, mostly because most of the transitions and animations I do don't last more than a second, and also because JavaScript takes milliseconds by default. This makes it a little easier to read your CSS and your JavaScript side by side. And then there's the transition timing function, or cushioning. It defaults to ease, but basically this describes what the rate of change should be. Is it moving quickly? Is it moving slowly? Does it speed up at the end? Does it start fast, slow down in the middle, and then speed up? And then there's the transition delay. Most transitions happen instantaneously, but if you'd like to delay the transition by a few milliseconds or a second even, this property will let you do that. That way, you might say have someone hovering over a button and the color changes a split second after that motion. I don't know why you'd do that, but sometimes it's useful. Like easing, transition delay is optional. It defaults to 0, so all your transitions will fire instantaneously. This is what that looks like written in the shorthand. Now, you might look at this and think, well, the color is changing, but is it taking 100 milliseconds or 2 seconds? The way the computer sees this is that the very first value for time, 2 seconds, is the duration, because it's not an optional property. The very first one that's read is going to be the duration, and that makes the second one the delay. So if you send your browser a big old pile of timing values, it's always going to think that the first one is the duration. Are you ready for your first exercise? Let's try rolling a ball. The goal of this exercise is to make the ball roll when it's been hit by the paw. You'll notice that we have a couple of things going on this page. The HTML isn't really necessary to do anything to it. You'll just notice that we have a ball div, and we also have an image that is the paw. Both of them have classes of ball and paw, respectively. We'll be using those with the CSS. You'll also notice that there's a little bit of JavaScript that basically adds a class of playing to the body element after the window has loaded. We need this so that we can scope a change to these ball and paw elements when the page is loaded. Remember, transitions don't run instantaneously. They run when something changes, and we can change things by scoping those changes to their classes. So now that you know what the HTML is like, let's have a closer look at this CSS. Well, we already have a transition on the paw. It's got a transition on its transform. We can see that its transform, after the body gets a class of playing, changes to a translation of 30 pixels. That's how you see it moving forward by about 30 pixels when the page loads. So the transition property is transform, and it's going to take 1/4 of a second, and it's going to ease in. We've described its easing. So now what we want to do is we want to make that ball roll across the screen. So let's give the ball a transition next. Let's close out the JavaScript window. We don't need it. Down here inside ball, we're going to set up how we want it to change. Well, first off, it's always good to start with the end. How do we want this ball to look after it's rolled across the screen? Well, probably want it to be translate by about, I don't know, let's try 200 pixels. That's how far the ball will be. Notice how the ball immediately jumps to that position? That's because when the page is loaded, the playing class is added so quickly that the screen just draws the ball in that space. You don't notice it at all. If this were a very slow loading page and the playing class scope was all the way at the bottom, it might be a little bit of a drag before you saw the change, and you might watch the ball jump to the other side of the page. Maybe let's make it more like 300 pixels. There we go. But it's just jumping, and that's no good. We want it to roll, too. So let's give that ball a transition. First, we give it a transition property. Then we tell it what property we want to transition. In this case, transform. And how long do we want it to take? Well, we want it to take about 1 second. That looks about right. But you'll notice something interesting happening here. On CodePen, you can reload the page by giving your CSS a space or a return. You'll notice something interesting if you do this a few times. The ball starts moving before the paw has even hit it. We need to give it a delay. That delay can go right after that 1 second duration. Now, because the paw takes exactly 0.25 seconds to finish its transition, we're going to delay the ball's transition by 0.25 seconds. Now the ball doesn't start moving until after the paw has completed its transition. A quick note about working with CodePen: if you'd like to hang on to a copy of this, you can sign up for an account, and then you can fork this particular pen to your own account and save it there. Hi there, I'm Rachel Neighbors. You might remember me from projects like DevToolsChallenger.com or Alice in Videoland, but perhaps I'm best known for being the invited web animations expert at the W3C, curator of Web Animation Weekly, and founder of the Animation at Work Slack. And I'm here today to ask you a very important question. How much do you want to know about CSS animations and transitions? Do you want to learn their deepest, darkest secrets, where the bodies are hidden in their basements? No, they don't actually have bodies hidden in their basements. Okay, so maybe not bodies buried in basements, but how about Chrome and Firefox animation tools? Or how about how to make animations performant from the get-go? How to spot which of your animations are causing performance bottlenecks? Or maybe even how to sequence animations with JavaScript. I have it all, and I am going to share it with you in this, my online course. It's just like working with me at a workshop at a conference, except we do it here online. There'll be fun exercises on CodePen, which you can perform on your own, and I'll walk you through them. Super love using CodePen as a teaching tool. It lets you write CSS animations and transitions right there in the browser and watch as what you've written updates everything. You don't need to download a bunch of files. You don't need to set up a server or anything. You just type and watch what happens. Before you sign up for this course, make sure you understand how CSS works and have some experience with JavaScript, at least jQuery. By the time we're done with this course, you will know everything I know about CSS animations and transitions, and you'll be in the perfect place to bring them into your day-to-day workflow or make something fun with them. It's the perfect way to round out your skill set if you're a front-end developer, or get to know something new if you're just getting started with front-end development and want to let loose on your creative side. I hope you'll join me in Animation Essentials, CSS animations and transitions. Thank you. Yes, secrets. You will learn secrets about CSS secrets.